Are we connected?
We are.
Okay. Shalom Yeladim. Kol Tov.
Well, in click action, yes.
Yes, so Baruch Hashem, I am a double Bal Simcha. Yesterday night, my Anikel got engaged. So we have a new chassan in the family. And Thursday night, I once again became a great-grandfather. And I had a Ur Anikel, a baby boy. So right now, I have one great-granddaughter and 8 great-grandsons. Somewhat unbalanced, but Baruch Hashem, we should always share simchas and nachas.
Amen. But it didn't happen exactly the same time. So it was ein ma'arav simcha v'simcha, right? It was
Simcha v'simcha. But sometimes we wish that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be ma'arav for us simcha v'simcha.
Amen. Amen. I think the Rav can move a little closer to the mic because or something, or make it a little louder. Is that our mic? It's his, I think, right?
Is it okay? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Is the voice quality okay? Maybe it's just because my kids are leaving the house, so maybe you're making a drop of noise. Do you hear me well?
It's okay. Sure.
Okay, so today we're learning the sug of Ein Ma'arav and Simcha b'Simcha. Rabbi Gottesman made a comment to me that lately we've been learning a few sugyas that are somewhat not the happiest halachas. So we dealt with Ma'abadat Smiladas, important sugyas. So today, our sugya is about Simcha. Ein Ma'arav and Simcha b'Simcha. The source of this halacha is a Mishnah, Moyed Kotten Chesem et Beis, Ein Nasen Noshem B'Moyed. And at the Gemara, we find 4 different reasons. If we could have the Gemara on our screen, and definitely.
Yeah, Pesach, you got to go to work here, please, if you don't mind. Let's put out this is the Maram
So, Moyed Kotten Chesem et Beis, we have the Mishnah, and Bezeh Achar Zeh, 4 different explanations. Bottom of the page, Ein Nosem Noshem B'Moyed, Lo Besulois, Velo Almonois, Ve'en Miyamen. And the Gemara, Mepnei Shesimcha Hu Loi. That is the reasoning of this halacha. Mepnei Shesimcha Hu Loi. And the Gemara asks, V'chi Simcha Hu Loi, my hava. So what? Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Shmuel, V'chein Omer Rav Elazar, Omer Rav Oshaya. Rav Elazar, Omer Rav Chanina, Lefi she'ein ma'av simcha b'simcha. That is one reason. Rabba Baravinu Omer, Mepnei Shemaniach Simcha Zaregal, Loisig b'simcha si'ishtoi. So Pashtus in the Gemara seems to be another reason. Not a general halacha, across the board, ein ma'av and simcha b'simcha, but a more specific one. Chacham HaChoshish, that he's going to focus on his personal simcha, and it will somewhat diminish simchas HaRav. Omelei Abayda Rav Yosef. And then the Gemara says, so that seems to support the second opinion. Rashi explains, Chacham want us to rest, focus on learning, focus on ruchnias. So Rashi explains, and finally, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says, Chachamim were afraid, if you could make a chassan on Chol Hamoed, everybody will, they don't want to lose work days. So Chol Hamoed were not working. So people will postpone all the chassanas to Chol Hamoed, and that is a bitul mitzvahs priyo or revio. So in Babli, we find 4 different reasons. And then the Gemara goes on, and that will take us to Tesomid Aleph. And how do we know, from where do we learn the halacha, Ein Ma'arav and Simcha b'Simcha? And the Gemara brings a posuk in Sefer Malachim. When Shlomo Melech finally had the schus of building the Beis Hamikdash, v'yas Shlomo be'eis hahi, es achad, v'chol yisol imoy, kol gadol מלבוא חמת עד נחל מצרים 7 ימים ו7 ימים, 14 ימים. So Chazal say, what is the emphasis? 7 yomim ו7 yomim, ein ma'aven simcha b'simcha. So Shivas Yemei HaChag into themselves, and then another 7 days to rejoice, binyan beis hamikdash. So it is from this pasuk in Sefer Malachim that we learn, ein ma'aven simcha b'simcha. We have the Gemara in Yerushalmi, which is quite similar to the Bavli. And if we can have on our screen, Yerushalmi Moed Kotan Vav Amud Av. So 3 out of the 4 reasons we find in Bavli, we find in Yerushalmi as well. Shimon bar Ba b'shem Rabbi Yochanan mipnei bittul pri Oravia. In Bavli it is the last, and Yerushalmi it's the first. Doesn't really make much of a difference. Or in Kamar Rabbi Yossi, Eved Mashi Yisem Moshe Mamayed. And then, so Bittul Pri Oravia. Second reason, Rav Ila, Rav Elazar b'shem Rav Chanina, al shem she'ein ma'avin simcha b'simcha. How do we know ein ma'avin simcha b'simcha? Ki Chanukas HaMizbeachos Shivas Yomim, v'chag Shivas Yomim, same as Bavli, but then Rabbi Yankev Bar Acha Shamala Menado, Malay Shavua Zois, and that brings us to Parshas HaShavua. Malay Shavua Zois, Yankov Avinu made an extra simcha, Shivas Yamei Mishtav Leah, and another one for Rochel. So according to the Yerushalmi, one of the 2 opinions we learn from this week's Parsha, Ein Ma'av Simcha Rebavo B'Shem Reb Elazar, Torach. So in Yerushalmi, the only of the 4 reasons we find in Bavli, Mepnei Shemaniach Simchas HaRegel V'Oisek B'Simchas Ishtoi, that we don't find in the Yerushalmi, only in Bavli. Bittul Pri Oravia, Torach, Ein Ma'aven, we find in Yerushalmi. The other difference is, the Yerushalmi learns Ein Ma'avin Simcha b'Simcha from another source. Are we dealing with the Dioraisa or a Darabanan? Let's go back to the Bavli and have a look at Tosfos. Ein Ma'avin Simcha b'Simcha. We go back to the Bavli we had on the screen just a moment before, and we'll have a look at the Tosfos. Ein ma'avin simcha b'simcha. This is very interesting, the Lashon of Tosfos. Gzeres HaKosov. Ki the Dorish Lakamon Mekro D'Shloima. Ubi Yerushalmi Dorish Midachsiv Malay Shavua Zois. V'tam Nerek Tzas Kamo Shein Oisim Mitzvahs Chavilas the Be'in Shei Liboi Poni LeMitzvah Achaz V'lo Yifna Atzmoi Heimeno V'chein Simcha b'Simcha Many times I quote the Tosfos just to stress that Simcha is a mitzvah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be b'Simcha. And Simcha is a mitzvah. So just like Einois and mitzvahs chavilos, Shi'e liboi poni lemitzvah achas, the same regarding Simcha. So what is interesting in Tosfos is, Tosfos starts off saying, Gzeres HaKosov. And he brings the Gemara and Bavli, which is Divrei Kabbalah. Is that defined Gzeres HaKosov? Does Gzeres HaKosov necessarily mean Minat Torah? Or would we translate these 2 words literally? Gzeres HaKosov. Kosov is Lav Davke Torah's Moshe. Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim are all Kisvei Kodesh. So when Tosfos says Gzeres HaKosov, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's Minat Torah, because Tosfos quotes the Bavli learning it from Sefer Malachim. The Yerushalmi learns it from Chumash, this week's Parsha. And then Tosfos says, Tam Nere Ktsas. Usually, if we're dealing with Gzeres HaKosov, we don't need to explain the Tam. Tame mitzvahs, lo darshinan tame dekra. So Tosfos is interesting. In Ksubas Mem Zayin, Tosfos not only uses the expression Gzeis, but Tosfos writes, it's min haTorah. So that goes beyond the Tosfos in Moed Katan. Mosar Shabbos Yoris. So this is actually, it's not a picture of the page, but it is the Lashon of Tosfos. V'samachta b'chagecha v'lo yishtecha. Ein asan Lashon Moed, mishim de'emar v'simcha v'zeret. Droshe gemori, kedemreina b'chagiga, dehave midioraisa. So Tosfos says, in Ksubis, it's dioraisa. I want to note something interesting, and we'll get back to it in a few minutes. Let's read the beginning of Tosfos, which seems to be a contradiction and stealer. This is These are two different reasons in Babli. They're not the same. One time, the Gemara says, Simchas achag v'oisig b'simchas ishtoi, and then the Gemara brings the drosha v'samachta v'kecha v'lo v'ishtacha. Eima avim b'simcha, simcha is another reason, and Tosfos seems to combine the two, as if they're one and the same. I'll get back to that in a few minutes when I want to share with you a big chiddush of Minchas Osher. But right now, so Tosfos in Ksubah says it's min haTorah. Tosfos in Moed Katan says Gzeres HaKosuv, but Tosfos also offers rationale. Kamo ein oisem mitzvahs chavilas chavilas. The Ramban clearly feels that it's a derabanan. And the Ramban is the parsha of Yaakov Avinu marrying Leah and Rivka. And the Ramban talks about the posuk Malay Shavua Zois. It's not a diuraisa. So how could we explain Malay Shavua Zois Shivas Yimei Mishta? Ulai noimar shenagu bemetchilo nechbodei ha'umois ke'inyan ba'avelois. So the Ramban writes, what does it mean, Malay Shavua Zois? Shivas Yemei Amishta, but Shivas Yemei Amishta the Rabbanon. So the Ramban says, even though it's the Rabbanon, but it was the minig before Matan Torah, like Avelis. Umasha lomdu makan b'Yerushalmi ubebereishis rab'shema v'simcha b'simcha. Smach ba'alva memenhoge akadmoinim koidem haTorah. Aval begemor shalanu lo lamdu mekan v'darashu v'viyas shloima. So this Ramban is very interesting. The Ramban says it's definitely not min haTorah. So if we darshan it from this week's parsha, it's just a smach, it's just an asmachta. If we learn it from the Yerushalmi, then it could be a drosha gemura, because that's after Matan Torah. Ksav Sofer and Tshuva says, what would be the nafkamina between Babel and Yerushalmi? So he refers to halacha that we will discuss a bit later in our shir. Shechanoch Paskins, by Purim, there is no Isar Eima'av and Simcha b'Simcha, and he could marry your wife on Purim. Reb Shlomo Zalman Oyabach married his wife on Purim. And at the Chasana, his drosha, and in those days, the Chosin said a drosha at a Chasana. Today, it's unheard of. Some places in Europe, Rabbanim give droshas at Chasanas. In America and Israel, I haven't seen it. But many years ago, the Chosin used to darshan, and the drosha of Shlomo Zalman said that his Chasana, which was Purim, was on the sugya of Ein Ma'av and Simcha v'Simcha. So as a machlokes at a shoynim, could one marry his wife on Purim? Ksav Sofer says it depends on the two sources. If the source is Malay Shavua Zois, Ein Ma'av and Simcha v'Simcha, any Simcha, even Purim. But if the source is the posuk and Sefer Malachim, that is only Yom Tov, which is a mitzvah Simcha D'Oraisa v'Samachto b'Chagecha. So Purim would not have the same din. So the Ksav Sofer wants to be machadish. The question of marrying on Purim would depend on the Machlokes Bavli Yerushalmi. What is the source? She'ein ma'arven simcha v'simcha. So up to this point, everything is very glatt, relatively simple. Now we're starting to complicate matters with a stira in Divrei HaRambam. Perik Yud Melchus Ishas Halacha Yud Daled. Mutar la'aretz b'kol yoyim choyer afilu b'tisha b'av bein b'yoyim bein b'laylo. Because Erusin is not defined as a simcha. Aval ein noisim noshim lo b'yerev Shabbos v'lo b'yechad b'Shabbos. Gzeira mishum chilul Shabbos. V'afilu b'chol ha-shemoed ein noisim noshim kumo shebiyano lefi she'ein ma'aven simcha b'simcha shene'emar malei shavua zois ve'etna l'cho gam zois. So let us bear in mind two things. One, of the four different reasons we find in Bavli, the Rambam and Hilchos Ishus Paskins ein ma'arven simcha b'simcha. Point number two, he doesn't quote the Bavli, but rather the Yerushalmi, shenemar malei shavua zois, which is a chiddush. Because usually, if we find a halacha or a drosha, both in Bavli and Yerushalmi, the Bavli is the more powerful and the more accepted one in halacha. So let us bear in mind, of the four different reasons we find in Masechet Moed Katan, the Rambam Paskins, ein ma'arven simcha b'simcha, and he quotes after the pasuk that we find in Yerushalmi, not Bavli, which is Shlomo HaMelech's Chagiga l'regal Kumas Beis HaMikdash. Now we go over to the other Rambam in Hilchos Yom Tov Perek Zayin. Ein noisim noshim v'lo miyabim b'moyed kedei shelo tishtakach simchas hachag b'simchas nisuim. That is not ein ma'arven simcha b'simcha. That is the other reason. I don't remember the names of the Ameroim, but that is kedei shelo yishkach simchas haregel v'yasimchas ishtoi v'samachta b'chagecha v'lo b'ishtocho. So is the Rambam Soisa Divrei Atzmoi from Hilchos Ishus to Hilchos Yom Tov. Let's keep on, continue reading this Rambam in Hilchos Yom Tov. Aval machzu was gurushasoi uma'arsim noshim b'moyed ubervat shelo yaseh sudas eres v'lo sudas tasiyed kedei shelo ya'arev simcha acheres b'simchas hachag. This loshen shelo ya'arev simcha acheres b'simchas hachag does seem to indicate ein ma'arven simcha b'simcha. Why doesn't he use the same language? Shelo tishtakach simchas hachag b'sudas nisuin. So it's not only a stira from Hilchos Ishus to Hilchos Yom Tov, seems to be somewhat of a stira minei ubei. So this brings me to a fundamental question that I actually indicated when we saw the Tosfos in the Masechet Ksubis. Tosfos seems to confuse two different reasonings. Could we scroll back up and have a look once again at the Tosfos in Ksubis? It's on the top of this page, of the page we are on right now. Afal gav the yom ha'mayid kolim v'samachta b'chech v'ola b'ishtocho ein asa noshim b'mayid mishum de'em ma'arven simcha b'simcha. But in the Gemara there are two different tamim, two different reasons. What I want to argue is Rav and Shmuel, one builds on top of the other. Shmuel says ein ma'arven simcha b'simcha. Then Rav says it's not exactly the same, but strikingly similar. Torah is a totally different reason. We don't want people to work hard on Chol HaMoed. Bittul Pri Ervia is definitely totally different. We don't want people to push off all the chasanas to Chalamayid. But Shalot Tishtakach Simchas HaChag is somewhat similar to HaRav and Simcha B'Simcha, especially according to Tosfos Amayit Kotten, Sheyehei Liboy Ponui B'Simcha. So what I mean to argue is, Rav and Shmuel are two different nuances, but they're not totally different. The difference is, if we dash in the posuk Shalot Tishtakach Teres HaChag, V'samachta b'chagecha v'leibishtacho, maybe the halacha refers only to Yom Tov, not any other simcha, only bittul simchas Yom Tov. Shmuel says no, it's a broader concept, all simchas, ein ma'arv and simcha b'simcha. And towards the second part of the shiur, we'll have different questions that Achronim deal with. Now let's continue to the Rif. And I want to strengthen the feeling we just developed from the Rif. Let's scroll down. Here we are. So, the Rif is different than the Rambam. And you're all probably familiar with the Rif. The Rif was the Rambam's predecessor, came before the Rambam. But the Rambam used his own language, a totally new sefer. The Rif quotes Chazal. And he only brings those halachas that are nifsak la-halacha, but in the Rif there are nuances, and sometimes extremely important nuances. So the Rif quotes the Mishnah, Nasan Noshem b'moyed, mipnei shesimchi eloi, mipnei shesimchi eloi, v'chi simchi eloi mai hava. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Shmuel, lefi she'ein ma'arv simcha b'simcha. V'omer Rav Daniel bar Katina Omer Rav. Menayin she'ein nasan noshem b'moyed, she'nema v'samachto b'chagecho v'chagecho v'barishto. Ula Omer, ein nasan noshem b'moyed Torah. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Now let me explain a nuance. Ula Omer, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Omar. That is the formula when there's a machlokes. Rav Omar, Ula Omar, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Omar. But going back to Rav and Shmuel, the Rif doesn't quote Rav Omar, but rather Ve Omar Rav Daniel. The Vav is a Vav HaChibur. The Vav proves that Rav is connected with Shmuel. And instead of Rav Daniel bar Katina, B'Shem Rav Omar, it is Ve'omar Rav Daniel. That is a Tosefes, that is an explanation. So the way I learn the Rif is, Ula and Rav Yitzchak Nafcha are totally new and different reasonings. Rav and Shmuel go together. Rav and Shmuel go together. Shmuel says, Ein ma'arv and simcha b'simcha. Shmuel's friend Rav and Shmuel were contemporaries, Barei Plukta, sometimes Chaverim. Rav adds on Shmuel. Menayin she'ein nosem noshem b'moyed, v'samachto v'chagecho v'tevolishto. Now, that is not source number 3 for Ein ma'arv and simcha b'simcha. No. We only have Yerushalmi and the Babli. Malashavua Zois, Simchas Beis HaMikdash. But Rav is similar to Shmuel. But Rav says, no, it's more limited. It's more limited. It is a din misuyim in Hilchas Yom Tov. Not a general halacha, ein ma'arv and simcha b'simcha. All the simchas. No. It is about ein ma'arv and simcha b'simcha, but it's limited to Yom Tov. V'samachta v'chagecho v'lo v'ishtacho. And to me, this has so much appeal, such a stark svara. And now we go back to the Rambam. And it's gewaldig. So the Rambam in Hilchas Issues, it's not Hilchas Yom Tov. The Rambam in Hilchas Issues is not only about Yom Tov. The Rambam in that very same perek in Hilchos Ishus speaks about marrying two women. I think it's in Halacha Yud Gimel. I don't know whether we have it on our source sheet. But the Rambam also says you cannot marry two women together. And if you did marry two women at the same time, you need to have separate 7 days for Rochel and another 7 days for Leah. So the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus is not Hilchos Yom Tov. The Rambam in Hilchos Ishus is a broader halacha, and that is why he brings the halacha of Ein Ma'arven Simcha B'Simcha. The Rambam in Hilchos Yom Tov is Hilchos Yom Tov, and that is more specified. So the Rambam in Hilchos Yom Tov writes, Ein Osem Moshem Kedei Shelo Tishtake Simchas HaRegel, and that is V'Samachta V'Chagech V'Levistecho. And he also says, Lo Ya'arav Simcha Cheres B'Simchas HaChag. So the Rambam, like the Rif, says these two drushes are very similar, but they still are two different drushes. So what are we looking for? Oh, here we are. יש לידו לשים ראש שבס כאחד, ביום אחד, ובאור בחססן. אבל השמחה, צורך סמכם כל אחת, שמחה ראוי לה. הם בסול הזין, ואין מערבן שמחה בשמחה. So the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus, in that very same perek, speaks not only about Yom Tov, and that is why he doesn't quote the pasuk Shelo Yishtakech Simchas HaChag. No, it's beyond Shelo Tishtake Simchas HaChag, Ein Ma'arven Simcha B'Simcha. And that is why he doesn't want to quote the source of the Bavli, because the source of the Bavli is Simchas HaChag. And the Rambam in Hilchos Ishus wants to say, not only Simchas HaChag, two noshim the same. And that is why he quotes the Yerushalmi. He quotes the Yerushalmi because of Halacha Yud Gimel. Halacha Yud Daled, he could have quoted the Bavli as well. But because of Halacha Yud Gimel, if you marry two women together, you need to designate 7 days Simcha for one and 7 days Simcha for the other. And that is why he quotes the Yerushalmi Manash Shavua Zois. That is exactly the story of Yaakov Avinu, Rochel V'Leah. But in Hilchos Yom Tov, Hilchos Yom Tov deals specifically with Ein Noshim B'Yom Tov. And therefore he quotes the other halacha. Shelo Tishtake Simchas HaChag. Let's scroll down. Just Mamishav the Rambam again in Hilchos Yom Tov on our screen. So, Be'enai, this is a gewaldige Hesber in Divrei HaRambam. So when the Rambam writes, Ein Nosim Noshim Bevlod Mi'av HaMoed, Shelo Tishtake Simchas HaChag B'Simchas Nesuyin, Kedei Shelo Ya'arav Simcha Cheres B'Simchas HaChag. So let me just focus once again and explain what we had up to this point. In Bavli, there are 4 different reasons. Yerushalmi only 3. So, to me, it's so beautiful. It's not necessarily a fundamental machlokes Bavli Yerushalmi, because these two droshes in Bavli are so similar, Rav and Shmuel, and that's why the Rif adds Rav on top of Shmuel. Ve'omar Rev Daniel. And that's why the Yerushalmi doesn't bring them both. They're one and the same. And that is the Rif, and that is a teretz on the Rambam. It's not a stira at all. In Hilchos Ishus, the Rambam explains the broader halacha, because he also wants to explain halacha Yud Gimel. And that is why he quotes the source of the Yerushalmi. In Hilchos Yom Tov, he quotes the Rav and not Shmuel, because Rav and Shmuel are not a fundamental machlokes, as we explained. And this brings us back to the question, could one marry his wife on Purim? Tov Reish Tzadik Vav. Could we have it on our screen? Could we have Tov Reish Tzadik Vav? I think we need to scroll down. Probably we have it. Here we are. Mutar Lisa Isha B'Purim. Why is that? Because Purim, there's no mitzvah simchas min ha-Torah. The Magen Avraham disagrees. The Magen Avraham says, if the reason would be v'samachto b'chagecha v'loi b'ishtecha, so it's only Chag. But the Magen Avraham says, we pasken HaRav and Simcha b'Simcha. So it should be the same Purim. So we need to pasken that ein asen noshim b'Purim, because, so if the reason is Bittul Pri Arviyah or V'samachta b'chagecha, we understand. And because Purim is one day, we're not afraid that everybody is going to push off Chasanas to Purim. Nobody will push off all the Chasanas to Purim because people can't dance on 500 Chasanas the same night. Chol HaMoed is somewhat longer. The maskana of the Magen Avraham is ein noisim noshim bepurim because of ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha. So that is the punchline. Is at the end. The firma sikasafti the kaiman on command of Emam Simcha also lacheneli sheyasa chuppah b'yoyim yud gemar. Now comes along the Darka Moshe, the Ramah, and the Darka Moshe agrees with the Beis Yosef, and let's have a look at the Darka Moshe. Kosav HaKol Boy. Tzorach im noisim noshim bepurim, l'fi she'emar simcha b'simcha. Oy dilmed lo yaser b'ragolim, shudi uraisen. Lo b'simcha zwan shev'divrei Kabbalah. Oy nema, sharabon osach chizek d'varem yoisem mishal Torah. V'ani oyma. Af al pi she'eni kedai lacha koleim. מכל מקום אכתב מה שנראה לי. ואף כי שומעתי מסכנים שאומרו שלא מעשה שהיו נושאים בפורים, ואומר כי לא שייך ערב שמחה בשמחה בפורים, דו לגב על הגולם אמרינן תמה, ושמחת בחגיך אבל באשתך, ובפורים לא יקסב, רק משתה ושמחה, וכל מה אתם משמח זג אלי. So, the Gemara might gives various different reasonings. Le'inyan dina lo pliga. So according to the Ramah, shum tanai poisek lo ishtamet loime da osa lisa b'purim v'afki akol b'mistape b'dov asfeika d'rabon l'kola v'chei kosav abis Yosef b'shem HaRashba ein limchois b'mokem shemekilim. So the Darka Moshe leans towards the Isur, but he says Ein Limchois. So Reb Shlomo Zalman's drosha. So let me share with you what Reb Shlomo Zalman Oyabach, one of the greatest gedolim of our time. Reb Shlomo Zalman was a giant in so many different ways, in his midas, in his Torah. So Reb Shlomo Zalman's chiddush was V'somachta b'chagecha is simchas Yom Tov. V'somachta b'chagecha v'loi b'ishtecha. Purim, you're mishta v'simcha. Anything that makes you happy is a mitzvah on Purim. Anything that makes you happy. Chayven ish levesume. How does that connect with Purim? Becoming drunk. Isn't Purim about a zeichel neis, just like Sholosh Regolim or a zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim? Purim is different. Mishta v'simcha. So Reb Shlomo Zalman's explanation was anything that makes you happy. If you're getting married makes you happy, that's a mitzvah of Simchas Purim. And Yom Tov, it's about Simchas HaChag. Purim, it's about Simcha. Simchas Purim is just being happy and merry, and that is why Purim there is Nisa. It's a Geshmak Chiddush. But in Darka Moshe, it's more mashma. Kederach HaPoiskim. Maybe there's a difference between a mitzvah Simcha d'Oraisa and a mitzvah Simcha which is only the Rabbanon. Now, we will discuss two additional shaylas, besides the question, Nisuyin and Purim. Did you ever see anybody saying Kiddush Levana on Shabbos or Yom Tov? Never. Why not? Did you ever think about it? Why not? So let me tell you my feeling. It'll sound strange to many of you, but to me it's clear that this is Torah sense. The reason there never was a minhag saying Kiddush Levana and Shabbos and Yom Tov is Mishim Isser Eitzua Mishos Rashos. It's a tefillah we say once a month. Most people don't remember it by heart, so they need to read from a siddur. And chutz la'aretz, in most places there were no Eirovim. So the minhag was not to say Kiddush Levana and Shabbos and Yom Tov, because you can't carry a siddur out of Rosh Hashanah to Rosh HaRav. Today in many shuls there's a big plaque outside with Kiddush Levana and lighting, but before we had electricity, we couldn't do that. So Laniya's deity, the reason we don't say Kiddush Levana, Shabbos and Yom Tov is because nobody remembered Kiddush Levana by heart, and you couldn't take a siddur out of shul into the street because that was Mishus Yochel Lishus Arab. But the Achronim have some interesting discussions. Shavus Yankov, Rabbi Yankov Reisha, one of the greatest Achronim 300 years ago, B'tshuvas Ramami Pano, writes a lesser Kiddush Levana Mishum Da'ein Ma'ar Simcha B'Simcha. Wow. So it has a shaykhs with our sugya. Oimerani, Tinach B'Yom Tov, Aval B'Shabbos Ma'atam Eloi. Shabbos there is no mitzvah of Simcha, Shabbos there is a mitzvah of Oinig. Mincha Sosha, Moed Mchela Kalef, I write a big arichas and I brought sources, there's a mitzvah of Simcha and Shabbos as well. So the Shvus Yankov disagrees with Ramami Pano. Ramami Pano says, Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. So the Shvus Yankov goes into a lengthy discussion in Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. Let's scroll down. And I think the Shvus Yankov quotes a Rashba. Could we go down? This is a lengthy discussion about Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. Does he quote the Rashba towards the end of his tshuva? Okay, so the Shvus Yankov argues Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha is only when you make a suda, but Simcha is a mitzvah. What's the problem of Simcha B'Simcha? You're not allowed to learn Torah because Pekudi Hashem Yeshua Nesamche Leiv. Being Mekayim a mitzvah B'Simcha definitely wouldn't be an Isser on Yom Tov. The Keren Oira, I think we'll see the Keren Oira. Keren Oira asks, how are we Messiahim Chumash on Simchas Torah? Boys in Simcha L'Gomer Shel Torah. Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha. V'samachta b'chagecho Simchas Yom Tov. So how do we dance and make a kofa Simchas Torah? Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha is only a Seuda. And that is why you can't make a Seudas Nisuyin.
If the Rav wants, we have the Shuvas HaRav by B'Shleimusa. Would you like to put it on?
So now we go to Tshuvas HaRashba. So the Rashba has nothing to do with Ein Ma'arvin Simcha B'Simcha, but it's a fascinating Rashba. Masha Marta Shomatzos Rav Moshe Mekutzi. Rav Moshe Mekutzi wrote the Smag, Sefer Mitzvahs Godel. He was one of the Balei HaTosfos in Germany, and he wrote the Smag. Masha Marta Shomatzos Rav Moshe Mekutzi, She'ein Mevorchem Berchas Aravona B'Leil Shabbos, Yesh Tchumen L'mala Mi'asoro, V'aval K'mekabel Pnei Rabbi L'mala Ma'asoro, V'she'alto Ma'ani Oima B'Seh. Very strange. It's a very short tshuva. Let's go through it. There is no Issa Tchumen L'mala Masor. Tchumen D'Rabbonanem, בואי ידולי, אפשרתי במסכת עירובין, כל צווי כדרבנן, וכול אפילו לכתחילה. אלא שאני, יש לו עבודת אחרת, שם בעירובין. ספרי יש בידכם, ספר עבודת הקודש. So the Rashba wrote 4 gewaltige Sforim. Chedush Rashba Rashas, we're all familiar with. Shuvas Rashba, and then he wrote Toras Abayis and Avodas HaKodesh. Toras Abayis is more about Isavaheta Yoredeim, Avodas HaKodesh, Shabbos Erevin, or Achai. So the Rashba writes, in Avodas HaKodesh, I clarified my opinion, Yesh Tchumen Malamaso. מכל מקום לעניין ברכס הלבונה לא ידעתי. מה העניין זה של תחומים בברכס הלבונה? וכי אם לא היה באפשר להגבל פני רבי אלא במלך הגודל, שיהיה ביניהם לא יקבל פניו? ואם תוהים מכן אם כרב בכל לא יבורך, שאינו מבורך קופץ למעלד מקום של לבונה? Well, כשם שאני לא אגיד, we give a little hop, but we don't jump to the לבונה. ואוהד שגם המבורך אינו מבורך על הלבונה לקודש ברוך הוא. והוא יסבור לכן למעלה, מסורה ולא למעלה מן התחומים, he's everywhere. שנעלם כל זילוריו, אלא שעונה כמקבלם פני שכנה, בדמיין הלבונה, שבורו, ומחד שבכל קודש. So the Rashba says, what you quote in the name of this mag just doesn't make sense. ואויד יש בזה עניין פנימי למי שזכור השם לעם הידורם. So the Rashba indicates על פי סויד. in פנימי יסתוירה. בדקנו בספר המצווה של הרב, ולא ימצאנו בו כן. I tried to look it up in Smag. Smag writes nothing similar to what you quote. אפשר כי יש מי שקיצר וכוסף כן מעצמוי. Doesn't make sense. So either it's a Pikabola, or maybe, as I said before, it's just about the Metzias. Moitze Mishus Rishus. People didn't remember it by heart, and that is why Shabbos and Yom Tov is so. So we go back to the Shvus Yaakov, and Ramami Pano says, Eim Ma'av Simcha B'Simcha. Yesh Oimrim. No, let's go back to the page we were before, the Ramah. How about Pidyon Aben, Shabbos and Yom Tov?
Rav wants to move forward, Rav Pesach, to...
Move down, exactly where we were before a few minutes ago. Let's go down. Here, down. Okay, a little more. Rama, Shin Hey. Yesh Oimrim Be'em Nasas Pidyon Aben B'Chol HaMoed, V'yesh Matirim. So in our source, we have the Rama, but the same we find in Shulchan Aruch. Tov Kuf Mem Vav Orach Chaim. It is permissible to make Pidyon Aben and Shabbos and Yom Tov. So this discussion starts in Tosfos in Moed Katan. If we could go back to Moed Katan Chesamid Beis, Tosfos writes 4 reasons why there is no problem making a bris on Chol HaMoed, and there is no problem of Ein Ma'aven Simcha B'Simcha.
Bottom Tosfos, Pesach. Pick it up slightly.
Yeah.
Studas Bris Mila, the bottom Tosfos.
Studas Bris Mila mutar lasos b'chol hamoed. The leket simcha, the loy mevrachin ish simcha b'moed mishum sheyesh tzara liyanuka. 1 reason. Ina mekivin shezman ekvu ein levatel ze mepnei ze. Aval Studas Pidyon Aben tzorach iyun mutar lasos b'moed. Why would there be a difference between Pidyon and Mila? We'll see shortly. ואין לו עם הזמן הקבוע, תנח בזמן שלו, בזמן היחיה מותר. נראה כמה נקרבה שזה דורש בחגך ולבישתכו, ואין הוא עושה לעשות לה בשמחה בשמחה. Tosfos בכלל doubts whether we pass the name of שמחה בשמחה. ועוד יש לו, לא חושב שמחה בשמחה, כי הם סודס נישואין לבד, because a chasana is the greatest level of Simcha. So Tosfos writes 4 different reasons why there would be no problem making a Sudas Bris or a Sudas Pidyon Haben. However, in Trumas Adeshen, we find a gewaldige Chiddush. Let's go all the way down to Trumas Adeshen. We were on that page before. Yeah, so we go up. Yom Lamed Aleph Shel Ben Bechor Sheba'oisi Yom Poiden Oisi Yomchal B'Shabbos Hayech Yasu Tzichem Lahamtem B'Pidyon Adachal HaShabbos Em Yesh Tekona She'eniv De B'Shabbos. It's a lengthy tshuva, but what is so surprising is he recommends postponing the Pidyon till after Shabbos because of the Suda. Because if you're going to make the Suda on Shabbos, there is no hecker that the Suda is associated with Pidyon Haben. And that's such a gewaldige Chiddush. Is the Suda that important? That we're doiche the Pidyon because of the Seuda? Would anybody in his proper senses suggest to be doiche a bris because can't make the Suda on Shabbos because there is no heker? Which brings us to the very last discussion in our today's shir. There's a fundamental difference between Yom Shmini b'Mila and Yom Lamed Aleph b'Pidyon Haben. Mitzvah say to do Mila b'Yom Shmini. B'Yom Shmini Yimel B'Sar Arloso. And that is a mitzvah say. If you didn't do it on the 8th day, bitul mitzvah say, you still have the mitzvah to do Mila Shaloi B'Smana. But that's a b'diavad. Day 31 b'Pidyon Haben is just Ziz Magdim ala mitzvahs. There is no chiyuv to do it on day 31. Pidyon Haben is once the child is 30 days old, you have the mitzvah. From that very day, Yom Lamed Aleph, till the end of his life. And the reason people are so makpid to do it on day 31 is these Magdim ala mitzvahs. Especially it's a mitzvah chaviva. It's a mitzvah which most people don't have an opportunity to do in Makayim. I had 7 children. It took 35 years in my family till we had the first Pidyon Haben.
Wow.
35 years. And the first Pidyon Haben we had half year before my wife passed away, and it was a big simcha, more than 35 years. So,
7.
and that is why people are makbid. Chaviva is a mitzvah. It's such a mitzvah chaviva, we don't push it off. But by halachic definition, it's just Ziz Magdim ala mitzvahs. It's like Mila Shaloi B'Zman. And therefore, nobody would even dream you'll be doiche bris b'yom shmini because there won't be a hecker by the Suda. But according to Trumas Adeshen, Pidyon Haben is different. It's more important there should be a hecker by the Suda, and it should be obvious that this is a Suda's Pidyon Haben, not a Suda Shabbos, and that's why Trumas Adeshen suggests having the Pidyon and Yom Lamed base. So the last sources we have on our sheet are actually to prove the case that there's a difference between Mila Bismano and let's have a look at the Rosh. It's on our sheet. Misha Nored Ben Bechor. Chayav Radoisa Bechor Mishlom Kesef Lachashiyah Ben Shloishim Yom. Kidasit do Mechadishtuta. Va'achashiyah Ben Shloishim Yom Yevdena Miyad Lo Yacher Mitzvosoi K'moy She'omro Shmarta Misamitzes and Misaboriyot Chol Tachmitzen. So what do we learn from the Rosh? It's not a bitul mitzvah to say mitzvah boriyotcha al tachmitzen. Mari Asad wants to prove differently from Sefer Tanya Rabossi, and I disagree with his pshat and Tanya Rabossi, but Yehuda Asad brings Tanya Rabossi. Ma'em esachai b'Pidyon Haben yom shloishim alamalo shenem abdim lechodesh umekan veilach kol yom v'yom oiver olo be'aseidet yivide. over all of Maaseh, according to Maria said, that's a bit of mitzvah say. But I brought many sources in my sefer that not always over all of is a bitul mitzvah say. It means every moment you could, you should. Toisim Baba compares Pidyon Haben to Priyas Chayv, just like any other Priyas Chayv. You need to pay as soon as you could pay, as soon as this man paroin comes. But it's not a bitul mitzvah to say. Yom Ramadan of the Pidyon Haben is not comparable to Yom Shmini B'Mila, because by Mila there's a clear, explicit mitzvah to say B'Yom Hashmini Yom Saros. The pasuk doesn't say Meyom Hashmini, or rather B'Yom Hashmini. By Pidyon Haben, the pasuk says Uvdu Yom Me Ben Chodesh. There's a difference between Me Ben Chodesh and not Meyom Hashmini, however, B'Yom Hashmini. So today we discussed HaRav and Simcha b'Simcha. We should be zoicha to share Simchas and B'Seidas Toivos. As I said, this weekend was a double Simcha in my family. Next day of Shabbos, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to have a bris b'siyata d'shmaya. And I wish all of you, we should share Simchas and Nachas and B'Seidas Toivos.
Amen.